this is what we have been asked to do in this particular problem. You are given the ABCD parameters of a lossy transmission line. We have derived these in the past. Y0 is the characteristic admittance of the line, which is 1 upon Z0. Z0 is the characteristic impedance. Gamma is the complex propagation constant. L is the physical length. Well-known things. Okay. One method could be that you apply definitions of S11, S12, S21, and S22 ab initio and come to the result. The other method, which is more popular, is if you know the ABCD parameters, put them in these formulas. It saves you a lot of derivation headaches. So for S11, let me double check. Even if this table is given to you in the exam or you have the access to it, you should be able to read it correctly. During panic, don't make mistakes in taking the formula down on your answer book. So S11 is the first formula. It is A plus B divided by Z0 minus C multiplied by Z0 minus D, and divided by A plus B upon Z0 plus C upon Z0 plus D. In fact, I had made a mistake in copying it from the table. I corrected it, of course. By the way, in this problem, there is a catch that we are assuming that the characteristic impedance of the line Z0 is the same as the port impedance, which is actually what they mean by Z0 in these formulas. A network is always terminated into two ports. We are talking two-port networks, so one input port, one output port. Ports have their own impedance in which they would like to see the impedance matching done. In these formulas, we are assuming that the ports have, both the ports have impedance of Z0. And in the problem given also, indirectly, we are assuming that that same Z0 value applies to the transmission line also. It's an implicit assumption. So we are using the same Z0. Otherwise, if the characteristic impedance of the line were different, then this Z0 within the matrix for ABCD would have been different from the Z0 of the port given in the formula. These are the nuances that you have to be aware of besides using the formulas. Anyway, in this case, there is no issue. Z0 is Z0 throughout. So let's plug the values. A is cos hyperbolic gamma L. B is Z0 sin hyperbolic gamma L. So I divide that by Z0. I get sin hyperbolic gamma L minus C Z0. So Z0 multiplied by Y0, which is 1. So minus sin hyperbolic gamma L and minus D, which is again cos hyperbolic gamma L. So you see that the result is 0. We had obtained this actually in the past using the basic definitions of S11 also in a previous problem. So it's good to see that the formulas also produce the same result. Now coming to S12, the formula is 2 times AD minus BC divided by the same denominator. In all the 4 formulas for S parameters, the denominator is identical. Okay. Now for a reciprocal network, AD minus BC is 1 and a transmission line is a reciprocal network. Actually, I have shown this again here that AD is cos hyperbolic gamma L multiplied by cos hyperbolic gamma L, which is cos hyperbolic square gamma L, and BC is Z0 Y0 sin hyperbolic gamma square L. So Z0 Y0 becomes 1. So what you get is cos hyperbolic gamma square L minus sin hyperbolic square gamma L. And that, if you are not sure, I have proven on the left side, is 1, using the basic definitions of cos hyperbolic and sin hyperbolic functions. cos hyperbolic square theta minus sin hyperbolic square theta is always 1. So what we get is the numerator in S12 becoming 2 and denominator has the same result as in the previous case. Cos hyperbolic gamma L plus sin hyperbolic gamma L plus sin hyperbolic gamma L plus cos hyperbolic gamma L. So 2 times cos hyperbolic gamma L plus 2 times sin hyperbolic gamma. That's the denominator. Now you can break it up. Cos hyperbolic gamma L formula in terms of e to the power plus gamma L and e to the power minus gamma L can be written. Sin hyperbolic, same thing, sum it up. You get e to the power minus gamma L for S12. This also agrees with what we had derived earlier using the basic definitions of S parameters. S21 formula, you see, for a reciprocal network, S12 and S21 are equal. So you see for S21, there is no AD minus BC in the numerator. You simply have 2. That doesn't matter in this case because AD minus BC is 1 anyway. So S12 and S21 will be equal to each other. That's what I've written, same result. And S22 formula is slightly different from S11 formula. Compare only the numerators of the first formula and the last formula. Instead of A, positive A in the first formula, you have minus A. The other 2 terms are identical and the last term is plus D in the formula for S22, while it was minus D in the formula for S11. But anyway, in this case, A equal to D. So this also is immaterial for what we are doing right now. So S22 also turns out to be 0. This also agrees with what we did in the past. So it's good to see that these formulas actually work. When looking at networks other than transmission lines, again, the same theory can be used. For instance, this is a T network for which we have already derived ABCD parameters in the past. A is 1 plus Z1 upon Z3, B is Z1 plus Z2 plus Z1 Z2 upon Z3, C is 1 upon Z3, D is 1 plus Z2 upon Z3. Now, based on this, let's try to derive S parameters for this T network. So formulas are the same, just that ABCD values are different. Here, to my own surprise, I found that not much simplification is possible. You plug in the values, double check my answers, you get fairly lengthy results, which may be true. Okay. I could not double check this answer with anything. I'd like you to double check this derivation. I made a mistake in the beginning, but I corrected it later on. Hopefully there is no mistake. If there is, I'll change this particular page later. But methodology is not very different from what we were doing in the previous problem. S12, again, in this case also, you can verify that AD minus BC is 1. I've done that verification. So this T network is also a reciprocal network. And if I do that, then S12 and S21 become equal to each other again. And the result is this. This time I have not bothered simplifying it anymore. S22 also, instead of A minus D here in the numerator for S11, we'll have minus A plus D. That's the only difference. So that also you can simplify. So please go through these derivations, make sure I have made no mistake. In any case, when it comes to simulation tools, most people do numerical calculations rather than converting using formulas. So it's okay. So the methodology does not change much. Third problem is also a repetition of the same concept. Here we have the pi network for which ABCD parameters are given. I have not done the detailed derivation. I'd like you to find the S parameters of this network using the equations that we have seen. Now, fourth one is actually a little more intriguing. It's a lossy transmission line whose physical length is given, but whose characteristic impedance is different from the port impedance. It is ZC. The characteristic impedance of the line is now ZC, which may or may not be equal to Z0, the port impedance. And propagation constant is given as gamma as usual. So I tried doing this derivation ab initio also. It was getting too involved. So I decided to use formulas here also. You can definitely go for an approach where you start with the basic definitions of the 4S parameters and try working out the formulas. But instead of that, I took the more reliable approach of starting with ABCD parameters of the line. Note that now in ABCD formulas, in fact, B and C formulas, I'm not using Z0 and Y0. I'm using ZC and YC. Because now the line has characteristic impedance ZC, which is different from Z0. This is the catch here. And YC is, of course, 1 upon ZC. Then I substitute the formulas, and here I was able to verify my results against published data, and they tallied. So S11 is A plus B divided by Z0 minus C Z0 minus D, and divided by that summation of the 4 terms. A is no issue, it's cos hyperbolic gamma L. B divided by Z0, B is now ZC sin hyperbolic gamma L. So B divided by Z0 will become ZC divided by Z0 sin hyperbolic gamma L. C Z0 will now become Z0 YC sin hyperbolic gamma L, which means Z0 divided by ZC sin hyperbolic gamma L. And D, of course, is cos hyperbolic gamma. And in the numerator, I was getting this. In the denominator, I'm getting the summation of the 4 things that I'm getting in the top. Now, this can be simplified a little bit at least. First of all, in the numerator, cos hyperbolic gamma L cancels out. Sin hyperbolic gamma L can be taken out, and within the parenthesis, you get ZC divided by Z0 minus Z0 divided by ZC. And in the bottom also, 2 cos hyperbolic functions add up, and sin hyperbolic gamma L comes out, and within parenthesis you get ZC divided by Z0 plus Z0 divided by ZC. You can leave it here. That is also a valid answer. But what I did was I went little ahead. I multiplied numerator and denominator by ZC to come up with equation 9. And here, by the way, you see that if ZC happens to be equal to Z0, the answer is 0, which is what we expect. Okay. It can be rewritten in several different forms. The published form is this, which is what I think I got also. Okay. Now for S12, which will be the same as S21, again we go through this rigmarole. AD minus BC is 1. So the top becomes only 2. In the bottom, you get what you got in the previous case also, which can be either left as it is or can be modified a little bit to fit what is available in the publications. This is the expected value of S12. Question 16. S21 will be the same as S12 because AD minus BC is 1, no change. S22 will have now minus A and plus D, but because A is D, so S22 will be also same as S1. Now, if ZC happens to be Z0, obviously I have already told you that S11 and S22 both go to 0. S12 and S21, they are both equal to each other, of course, but at the same time, they also further get simplified. If you put Z0 equal to Zc in equation 16, you get, I've shown it at the end, this 2Z0 square divided by 2Z0 square cos hyperbolic gamma L plus 2Z0 square sin hyperbolic gamma. 2 cancels out, Z0 square cancels out. What I get is 1 upon cos hyperbolic gamma L plus sin hyperbolic gamma L, which gives us e to the power minus gamma L, which is exactly what we were expecting. So these formulas work. You can simplify this result or these results for a lossless line by putting gamma equal to j beta. I'm sure that's easy. Cos hyperbolic and sin hyperbolic will be replaced by cos and sin functions. Now, scattering matrix is the last thing that I want to talk about. We have already spoken about it a little bit. There's one catch with the description of scattering matrix using reflected voltage waves and incident voltage waves, in the sense that we are still talking voltages, which become kind of difficult to define uniquely at high frequencies. So what people did, they carried forward with the scattering parameter definitions based on voltages and came up with what should I say, definitions, equivalent definitions based on square root of powers. Power can always be uniquely defined no matter how high the frequency is. I'll show you some practical side at the end. Okay. So that is called a generalized approach to scattering parameters. You don't have to worry too much about it, but at least be aware of the basics here. In microwave engineering course, this will be revisited anyway. We know these two formulas for voltages: total voltage at the input end for any network. I'm assuming, of course, transmission lines here. So in that case, it is V plus plus V minus. I1 is V plus minus V minus upon Z0. We know all this. So let me move forward. V2 similarly can be written by putting small z equal to L in the transmission line formulas. Okay. And we are assuming, this entire discussion assumes lossless line. Although it is possible to generalize it for lossy lines also, but let's start with lossless lines. Now what happens is, at the input end, you have got the two formulas V1 and I1. You can reverse the formulas and try to figure out V plus and V minus in terms of V1 and I1. And similarly at the output port also, try to figure out V plus and V minus in terms of V2 and I2. That's what I have done here. And even at a point in between input and output port, anywhere else on the transmission line, same thing can be done. V minus and V plus can always be written in terms of V and I at that particular position. At the input port, V plus is V1 plus Z0 I1 divided by 2. You can see the derivations. V minus is V1 minus Z0 I1 divided by 2. At the output port, the formulas become slightly different in terms of V2 and I2. In general, it has been shown by solving the transmission line equations in the reverse order that V plus and V minus are given by these two formulas in terms of the total voltage and total current at any location Z along the length of the line. That is the starting of generalized theory of scattering parameters. Once this is done, I've given a lot of explanation of what is incident voltage. What this is, V plus is obviously the incident voltage at any location. V minus is the reflected voltage. So all that is explained once again here. You may want to go through it once again. But more important thing is, let's look at power based on this. Suppose I have defined V plus and V minus this way, which is actually derived, it's not definition. And total power at any point along the length of the line, it's a lossless line, so power will be the same no matter where you look, whether at the input end or at somewhere in the middle or at the load end. It will be the same thing. I'm talking about average power. I'm not talking about reactive power at all. Complex power has two components, P and Q. I'm not talking about Q here at all. The average power is defined as 1 by 2 real part of V multiplied by complex conjugate of I. This was done, I think, in first year also. Here, V and I are assumed to be peak values. That's why 1 upon 2 comes in. So if I do that, and I put the formulas for V and I at any arbitrary location, small z, V plus multiplied by e to the power minus j beta z plus V minus e to the power plus j beta z, the whole thing multiplied by complex conjugate of I. Let's assume z naught is real, to simplify things. So you have to take complex conjugate of the second term, which is shown in parenthesis. And although I have written z naught complex conjugate, if z naught is a real number, that would go away. It will be simply z naught. Now, if you do this operation carefully, the first term in the first parenthesis is V plus e to the power minus j beta z. That gets multiplied to the complex conjugate of the second term of both the terms in the second parenthesis. So the first term in the second parenthesis will have the value V plus complex conjugate e to the power plus j beta z. Okay. And V plus multiplied by V plus complex conjugate gives you magnitude of V plus squared. And e to the power minus j beta z and e to the power plus j beta z cancel out. So the first term is a real term. And you try to multiply the last term of the first parenthesis with the last term of the second parenthesis, again you'll get a real term, which is minus magnitude of V minus square. The other two terms do not give real number. In fact, if you look at it carefully, the result is one term and minus of complex conjugate of that term. The second and third term are complex conjugates of each other. You can do it yourself if you're not sure. And if you subtract the complex conjugate of a complex number from the complex number itself, the result is always imaginary. So if you take real part of this entire thing, the middle two terms will not matter. They'll have no real part. As a result, the power simply works out to what is given in equation 16. This was the basis for defining S parameters in terms of powers. In a lossless case at least, it's easy to see that the total power has got V plus square magnitude, V plus magnitude squared minus V minus magnitude squared divided by 2 z naught. I'll tell you later how this becomes important. But before that, let's also look at this equation carefully. What are we trying to look at? Total power delivered, let's say the load end. Total power delivered there has got one term minus some other term. The first term depends on V plus. So this is depending on the incident signal. And the second term depends on the reflected signal. What is happening is, physically speaking, that we have got incident power minus reflected power equal to the total power delivered or net power delivered to the load. This is conservation of power. That is what you are watching in equation 16. Net power delivered to the load is incident power to the load minus reflected power to the load. You know the formula for power, average power. It is V square divided by 2 times impedance, right? As long as V is the peak value. So you see that for incident power, there is the same formula. For reflected power, same formula, but there is a minus sign between them. We have assumed small z throughout, but at the end, I'm more interested in load power, so I decided to talk about load power. This formula, by the way, is valid anywhere in the line. So what is happening is this. This term, V plus magnitude whole square divided by 2 Z naught, denotes the incident power in watts. The term V minus magnitude square divided by 2 Z naught denotes the reflected power in watts. And the difference of the two is the net power that the load is getting. If there is no reflection, then reflected power will go to 0 because V minus will be 0. Then the entire power will be delivered to the load. That is called matched condition, where ZL equal to Z naught. Okay. Now, based on this, what people did was, because they wanted to get rid of voltage and current completely from the formulation, they defined so-called power waves. And I will skip a lot of detailed derivations here. There was a quantity called A, small a, and another quantity called small b for both the ports. Quantity A was related to incident signal, incident voltage signal. And quantity B, not only voltage, sorry, incident voltage and current both. And quantity B was related to reflected signals. And based on, let me go back. I have that formula here somewhere. Based on what I was showing you earlier, these formulas. Okay, or even more generally, this formula. V plus equal to V plus Z naught I divided by 2, and V minus equal to V minus Z naught I divided by 2. What they did was, they defined an equivalent representation called power wave, which was essentially that formula, but assuming that Z naught is not the same for the network and for the port. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between equation 17 and equation 13. This is the same formula taken there. Only thing is, we have assumed that Z naught is not the same for port and the network. So more generalized definitions were given for these two parameters, A and B. For both the ports, they would apply. A1 and small a1 and small b1 for the input port, small b1, sorry, small a2 and small b2 for the output port. Just take them from me right now. If we take these formulas, these new quantities, small a1, small a2, small b1, small b2, which are related to v1, i1, and v2 and i2, and the impedances of the port, then, and by the way, port impedance can be complex also. That is why we are being careful here. Based on that, it can be shown that V1 and V2 and I1 and I2 can be expressed in terms of A1, A2, B1 and B2. It's basically solving the equations in the reverse order. And after we do all that, we are able to connect back to the formulation that we did in voltage domain and convert it into equivalent AB domain. The definition for S parameters in terms of A1, A2, B1 and B2 is what is described here in equation 30. This is how the S parameters are defined, where B1, B2, A1 and A2 are not voltages anymore. These are actually square root of power, if you look at it carefully. Look at the definition for A1. Supposing ZR, which is the port impedance, it's a complex number in general. Supposing it is equal to the real part of the port impedance RR. Suppose XR is 0. Then it's easy to visualize. If I take ZR equal to RR, what do I get? Look at the units. I have voltage in the numerator and square root of impedance or square root of ohm in the denominator. You know that voltage square divided by ohm is power. And what you are getting for A1 is actually square root of power. The units are square root of power. And same thing for A2. And the same thing for B1 and B2. A1, A2, B1, B2 are representing square roots of power. Very, very intriguing concept that they came up with, because you had to take what you did in voltage domain and do derivations from there. So they had to stick to square root of power, not power. This definition of S11, S12 and S21 and S22 is equivalent to what we did using V minus and V plus. I don't think I want to go any further. It can be shown that power delivered to the load, instead of the previous formula where we were using V minus and V plus, it can be written in terms of A and B, small a and small b. I'm talking on the load side right now. For input side also, similar formula would apply. Now, all this essentially allows us to, let me go back. To another PPT. This particular slide will reinforce what I have been telling you. Scattering parameters, motivation. They are difficult to implement. We have difficulty implementing open circuits and short circuits at high frequencies. So Z, Y, and ABCD parameters are very difficult to measure accurately, because open circuits and short circuits will not be perfect. There will be parasitic elements coming, inductors and capacitors. Also, if you are trying to characterize an amplifier or some other circuit containing active devices, there will be even bigger problems than accuracy. The entire design may start oscillating. There may be stability problems because you are actually influencing the design itself by creating parasitics when you are doing open circuits and short circuits. It can be dangerous. And V and I measurements are not uniquely done at high frequency. It is not possible. Depending on which path you take for the E field from one point to another, you get a different result. That is why direct measurement of amplitudes of power and phases of power is the technique used in real life for microwave work. This equipment that you see on the right does it in real life. This is called a vector network analyzer. We have, I think, 2 of them in our labs. It's a very complicated instrument. You see 2 ports right at the bottom. 2 coaxial cables coming out, coaxial lines. And at the end of them, you connect the circuit for which, or the network for which you want to measure the S parameters. Before you do that, you short circuit the 2 cables with each other and do calibration so that instrument uncertainty, etc. are subtracted out. Then you put the device And usually it is possible to measure the magnitude and phase of all the 4 S parameters directly on the screen. Data can be taken out in digital form also. It can be imported into an Excel spreadsheet and whatnot. You can do a lot of things with the data collected from the measurement setup. Filters, amplifiers, mixers, attenuators, you name it, everything can be tested using vector network analyzers. These analyzers do not use ABCD parameters or Z parameters or Y parameters. Another photograph showing the same thing. Here the device is connected between the 2 coaxial lines. The coaxial lines will have their own loss. That also has to be calibrated out. Okay. If you are connecting a lossless line between the 2 coaxial lines, then you should see S12 or S21 magnitude to be almost 0. Measurements are always done on the screen in dBs. Okay, that's why I insisted on telling you a lot about logarithmic scales. So depending on the nature of the component that you are testing or nature of the network you are testing, the values obtained for the 4 S parameters will be different, obviously. Frequency range is a big issue. If you want a wider frequency range in this equipment, you pay more money. We have machines that go up to 9 gigahertz, I think. Vector network analyzers that we have go up to 9 gigahertz. But in the market, you can get them to go to even as high as 40 or even 50 gigahertz from almost 1 megahertz at the bottom. Okay. There's a lot more in this PPT. I don't think we have time and there's no need. He has given things that we have already gone for. In general, the formulations that we have done can always be generalized for N-port networks. I'm avoiding that in this course. But most of the things here are already known to you. But if necessary, you can go through it once again here. He is focusing more on the N-port situation rather than 2-port situation. We have done most of it already. Transmission lines, etc. I think it's net power flow, I told you already. Incident power minus reflected power is the net power going out to the load, etc. Don't get too focused on every slide in this presentation. I wanted to show you only the first 2 so that you appreciate that what we are doing in theory is not just theory. It's much more than that. By the way, the insertion loss of any network is in dB, it is minus 20 log of magnitude of S12 or S21, assuming it's a reciprocal device. Okay. This is indirectly related to what we were calling attenuation. The reflection coefficient that we have been talking about is nothing but S11 in the S parameter domain. There are 2 reflection coefficients that you have to deal with in general at least. Input reflection coefficient, which is S11, output port reflection coefficient is S22. For a symmetric network, they'll be equal to each other. And minus 20 log magnitude of S11 is called the input return loss. Minus 20 log magnitude of S22 is known as output return loss. At least these names you should not feel very uncomfortable with. They'll be coming back to you again in microwave engineering course. I think that's about it. Let me just quickly see if there is anything more. Standing waves we have already seen. A lot of things here. Yeah, just ignore all. There is a lot of theory in S parameters. I don't think we have time to go into each and everything. There's a practical example of a design. This is all suited more to microwave engineering course than electromagnetics course, that's for sure. There are conditions in the S parameter derivation. There are conditions when the network will be lossless, when it would be reciprocal, when it would be symmetric, and so on.